Hylians! So it's finally November, and with that, the real countdown to Age of Calamity has begun. Again, I still can't get over how this game was first announced a couple of months ago and we are already so close to having it in our hands. Even with the game coming out so soon though, there are many things that are still hidden from us, things that at this point we don't know of. And with the addition of time travel, well, there really is no end to what we could possibly see. So today I want to talk about a couple of little things that I would love to see in this game. Story moments, characters, locations, things like that. And so with the intro all done, let's get right into this. Link's family is something I have wanted to see more of now for a long time. In many Zelda games, we don't get to know much about his family. Sometimes we get a grandma, a sister, or an uncle, but for the most part, it's kind of just left open for what his family could be like, so players can make up what they want. But within Age of Calamity, there are at least 3 different members of Link's family that we could be told more about. Link's father, little sister, and possibly his uncle. Many of you likely know of Link's father, as it was mentioned in Breath of the Wild that he was a soldier, but some of you might be wondering where I got the other 2 members of the family from. It's from this artwork from Creating a Champion, an image showing Link, a young girl, and an older man, commonly believed to be Link's family. The young girl resembling Hyrule or even Linkle, and the older man resembling Link's uncle from A Link to the Past. Apart from Link's father, no other family was mentioned in Breath of the Wild. It's very likely that Link's father died sometime before the Great Calamity. But if Link does have more family around like a younger sister or an uncle, I feel it's very likely that we could get to see them in this upcoming game. And with what we know to happen in this game, well, that could lead to some pretty heartbreaking moments. I'd love to see more of Link's family. Maybe we could learn that after Link's father died, with no one left to look after them, his uncle came to keep an eye on Link and his sister. After seeing this image, I've always imagined Link's uncle to be a blacksmith. So maybe growing up after his father passed away, Link's uncle started to also train Link, and maybe even his sister. With Age of Calamity being a Warriors game, and these games normally having quite large casts, if included, I'd love to see them as possible playable characters. Even if it was just in a side mode or outside the main story. Sticking to the theme of family, I want to know more about Zelda's mother. Again, like Link, Zelda doesn't really have much family around her. The most we really get to see is the King of Hyrule in games like Breath of the Wild and Wind Waker, and maybe you could also count Impa as she is very close to the princess. Outside of them though, not much, and we definitely haven't heard or seen anything from Zelda's mother in past games. I've always been super intrigued by the past of Zelda's mother. I've felt it more likely that she was born into the royal family instead of marrying into it, and so perhaps she also has the same power as Zelda, and if so, that would make her a lot more important than we are first led to believe. With characters like the King of Hyrule and Urbosa around, who were both obviously very close to the Queen when she was alive, I'd love to hear more about this character. I'd love a small moment like what we got in the Champion's Ballad, of Urbosa sitting down with Zelda and telling her about her mother. Telling the princess about what she was like, how she acted, and how the two got to know each other. And maybe we could find out a little bit more about how she died, as I don't believe it was as simple as her getting ill, especially if she did have such divine power. I've always had a big suspicion that this wasn't just a simple illness that killed her, and have felt that it may have been something a little more dark. I would really like to learn a little bit more about Zelda's mother and how she passed away, and those possible reasons for how she passed may be coming into play in some way into this new story. If you've been around my channel for a while now, you may remember that last year I made a video talking about this location. It's one of my favourite locations in Breath of the Wild. It's so mysterious with history that I'm just dying to know more about. The Forgotten Temple is such an interesting location to me. One that isn't really important to Breath of the Wild, but one that still holds so much history within it. The temple is said to have been made as a way to honour the past heroes, and with that it's also where we find the Tunic of the Wild after completing all the shrines. It is a little bit of a long shot hoping this location will be included in Age of Calamity, as it isn't really important to its or Breath of the Wild's story, but I would still love to see or even hear it mentioned in this upcoming game. And what about all the Guardians down there? They seem to have been excavated from somewhere 100 years ago and left down there. I don't believe these Guardians have been sitting down there perfectly for over 10,000 years, even if this place was largely forgotten about for all that time. Perhaps in the time of Age of Calamity, the temple is being researched. The Guardians inside we see in Breath of the Wild brought there so they could be researched alongside the location itself. It would be pretty funny seeing this location being researched within the game, saying myself and others have pretty much done the same thing. This location is a very interesting one to say for sure. Well, I'm sure some of you are not surprised by seeing this included in the video. With Ganondorf being quite the hot topic when it comes to Breath of the Wild sequel, I would really love to see something about him in Age of Calamity. Now, I don't expect to see him proper unless they do some kind of little tease at the end of the game showing him beneath Hyrule, but I think Age of Calamity would be the perfect place to start putting down little hints for what we could see from him in the game's sequel. We do have the Yiga seemingly playing a much bigger role in this upcoming game, along with the new villain who seems to be very closely tied with the Gerudo. I've mentioned in passing before how this new villain could actually be working to find the real Ganondorf and bring him back, maybe being the only person knowing that there is more to the Calamity. It could be through them and the Yiga that we get our first information towards why Ganondorf was sealed away to start with. As we'll also be spending more time with Urbosa in this game, I'd love to hear more of her perspective on Ganondorf. As a Gerudo, she's very closely tied with him and the violent past of her people, so getting a moment of her explaining her views on her people's past and the Demon King would be fantastic. There could even be the possibility of finding out more information on him from characters like the King of Hyrule, Impa, or even the Sheikah monks if they somehow turn up in this game. Again, Age of Calamity I feel would be the perfect place to start hinting towards Ganondorf. We know he's coming, but we don't know what led to him being sealed away yet, and we don't know what he wants. As the developers are working so closely with the Zelda team, I could see them working something about him into the game with the team's help. It could be a full cutscene of a character telling their perspective on him, or even a single line said in passing about him. But I'd love to see anything, no matter how big or small, hinting towards Ganon's return. This final thing I want to see in Age of Calamity is something I'm sure will happen at some point, and if it doesn't, I'll be surprised. A battle between the Sheikah and the Yiga. For all of the history we're told about between the Sheikah and Yiga, in Breath of the Wild we really didn't get to see much interaction between the two. I would have loved to see the Sheikah and Yiga fight one another in Breath of the Wild, but now in Age of Calamity we have the perfect setting for it. We already know how active both the Sheikah and Yiga will be in this time, working on their respective goals, so there's no doubt that at some point in this game they will come into contact with one another. Along with a cool fight between the two tribes, I'd really love to see or hear a little bit more about the past of the two. We know that the Yiga are a group who broke off from the Sheikah, but I would love to know more. I want to hear more about what happened in those years. Did anything crazy happen? One thing that I've always been a little confused about in Breath of the Wild is how the Yiga split from the Sheikah because they didn't want to stop using their technology, but we don't see them use any of it in Breath of the Wild. And from what we've seen of Age of Calamity, they still don't seem to be using it. Maybe we could have a talk between Koga and the current leader of the Sheikah, or even Impa, about the past of the tribes we've not yet been told about. Maybe explaining why the Yiga don't use the ancient technology now. even after it being a big reason for them splitting in the first place. So those are some of my picks of things I would love to see in Age of Calamity. Now I do understand that with the type of game that Age of Calamity is, we might not get much outside of the main story, but it's still nice to hope that we could get a little something. Tell me down below some of the things that you want to see in Age of Calamity, and tell me what you thought of my picks. It really isn't long now until all of our questions are finally answered. So if you're new here and want more Zelda content, and of course more Age of Calamity content, don't forget to subscribe. If everything goes well, I should also be doing an Age of Calamity playthrough once the game is out, and I can't wait to experience this game with all of you. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to go ahead and give it a like. It not only shows that you are enjoying the content, but also helps me out quite a bit. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!